Okay, welcome to the CIECAcast. This is Fred Iantorno, Executive Director of CIECA. Today's presentation will provide a summary of the changes and additions to the BMS in the release 2018 R2. Today, Dan Webster will present those changes and additions. Dan is a senior architect at Mitchell International, specializing in trading partner integrations. Dan has worked on auto physical damage integrations for over 20 years and enjoyed an insider's view of the collision industry's transition from proprietary communication protocols and data formats to today's more standardized environment. Dan is also co-chair of the CIECA Architecture Committee. Dan will walk through the latest BMS changes to the code lists and schemas submitted by committees to support photo estimating and tracking and OE part price matching. The presentation will also include how the Architecture Committee continues to improve the quality of each release. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please type your questions in the navigation pane of the webinar. We will answer as many of those as we can at the end of the presentation. I want to thank everyone for spending their time with us today, and to our presenter for sharing his insight and expertise with us. I will now turn this over to our presenter, Dan Webster of Mitchell International. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Fred. Greetings, everyone. It's my pleasure to be presenting what CIECA has done with the BMS in the last 6 months, and I'm hoping we're going to get to the initial slide for that really soon. So here's what's new, plus a QA update from your architecture team. First, the changes that are included in this release, as well as who requested the changes. What's new is also the architecture QA initiative to ensure the changes made in each release are accurate and the proposed changes in the accompanying instance documents validate. This initiative to make a QA instance file for every BMS message has been underway for several years now, and we can actually see the finish line now to within the next 2 years getting a message to validate for every section of the document. Here's a brief recap of the BMS code lists and schemas. What I introduce at this section is what the organization of the standard for CIECA is. It consists of 3 parts: the welcome and overview, the rules and definitions, the common elements and aggregates, and the CIECA messages. These are the sections numbered 4 through 19, and it's coming a long way since we just had estimates and assignments. We currently, 2 estimates and assignment, have services for disposition, attachments, parts and material, and repair order services, vehicle repair status service, authorization service, invoice statement and remittance service, location service, survey service, valuation service, title service, claim service, status service, appointment service, and first notice of loss. Each message in these sections 4 through 19 has numbered subsections. The first subsection contains the aggregates and elements used by more than one message in that section and not used by any other messages outside the section. Following that are the messages themselves. These subsections begins with a request message with even numbered subtabs and is followed by response messages within odd numbered subtabs. The code lists are a critical part augmenting the BMS messages. It's a Excel spreadsheet with 185 tabs, and the first tab is an index of code tables. Each code list named has a link to their code table. And code tables are either open or closed, where closed indicates all acceptable codes are listed, and open indicates the common codes, but recognizes that there are other codes that may be used as well. Some are used both ways for the different messages. After the 185 tabs of code list, the last worksheet is the change log. There's two versions of the schema that are updated with the BMS and code table. The classic schema contains the messages without code enumerations, and the code extension schema has codes embedded within them as well as their enumerations. So in this case, the validating a instance document with the classic schema does not validate that you've used only codes from the CIECA code list, and as the name implies, the strict schema does exactly that. That was a quick recap of the CIECA standards. Now for the changes that are new for this release 2018 R2. The committees that have made changes in this release were from the photo estimate, making changes in the VDI, vehicle damage and imaging messages, and the architecture committee. Photo estimate had changes in BMS Section 5, estimate service, adding vehicle damage photo estimate message. This included changes and additions to Section 3, the common aggregates. Aggregates and elements were included to identify if the estimate was written from photos. This includes each supplement for that estimate. At the last architecture QA meeting, the schema and BMS were spell checked. This required removing the carets at the beginning of each tag. This included the messages, aggregates, and elements. Where there were spelling errors, additions were made so that both the legacy and correct spelling were included in the BMS and in the schema. The BMS change log contains all the changes made. Now let's focus on Section 3, the changes that were made that potentially impact multiple messages and committees. Our photo estimate team took on the challenge of developing a vehicle damage photo estimate message. Changes in this section were to add photos taken info to the estimate event. Photos taken info can occur multiple times to enable the reshoot by the initial photographer, the third-party administrator, carrier, or repair facility. The estimate approver was also added to track who approved the photo estimate. This is important to the repair facilities as they are evaluated by the number of supplements they write, and it is unknown if more supplements are written for photo estimates. An estimate approver code table was added to the release's master code table to keep track of which party took care of the approval. The spelling corrections is what we referred to a couple of slides ago, where we managed to do spell checks on all the tag names, which is a challenge because the names are camel case, multiple words put together, and spell checkers don't understand this way of building tag names without a little help. And over the last couple of years, we've figured out how to help it, and it helps us in turn by showing all of the misspelled tag names we've got in there over the years. So the spelling corrections were in part 320, part info, where aftermarket had a capital M that shouldn't have been expected. In 320.5 recycle info, we didn't follow our naming convention of abbreviating version as VER, and our favorite, of course, was the 32012 assembly info, where we had assembly source code, and we've now corrected it to say assembly source code. So in the process, legacy name and new name. So the idea was we promise backward compatibility to users of the CIECA BMS standards. And so with these spelling corrections, it was important to make both the legacy misspelling of the tag and the corrected spelling with new capitalization in the case we're looking at here, or missing letters filled in. So the process of doing this is to, that's probably on the next slide. Well, we're still enumerating through them, excuse me. So you see in red here, the help you get from, ready for the next one, Fred. Yeah, we're just still going through them. So these are more spelling errors we found. Fulfilled part substitute was missing its L. Suspension was spelled with a T. The line of business didn't capitalize the second word. And pickup did, and it wasn't supposed to. So these are the kind of things we're finding that have been there for some time. In the code table, we added a new code list, as I referred to earlier, for the photo estimating application, where the different parties that could approve an estimate were listed. The code changes and impacted committees are the BMS version, obviously affects all committees, application type for photo estimating, damage locator part code for procurement, and document type for photo estimates. Continuing the code table changes, part type for estimates added the part type code, whose definition is new OEM price match, which was requested by one of our members. Additionally, party type added estimate approver for photo estimates. In aftermarket usage code table and source code tables, spelling changes were made impacting procurement and recycled parts. And again, the existing spelling and the correct spelling, or the legacy and the preferred, will both be valid. And that's a wrap for the code lists. The testing we're able to do, the QA initiative I referred to earlier, requires us to make a sample instance file for which each of the messages, and in particular, we started this off a few years ago with requiring a new instance for any of the new messages we're adding in a particular version of the BMS. The initiative is ongoing, and creating these instances are based on the implementation guide, which is we also call Appendix C. All the instances created to date are used to validate both schemas. The BAT software is the key to validating multiple instances via batch processing. Again, this tool is available to all CIECA members and is found on the CIECA website under the members. Select standards and tools, and then select tools. And the strength of this tool is, unlike the IDEs for XML that many people are using at their workplace, the BAT tool doesn't require you to change the messages that you're trying to validate, and lets you just point to a whole directory of files and gives you a report on any validation errors. So that was written a couple of years ago by Rick Glusick, and it's proven to be an invaluable part of this process. JSON schema development. We're continuing to work on JSON and resolving one error on the conversion process. That conversion process is automated tool that takes a XML schema and produces a JSON schema, and this replaces what I remember we did in Colorado Springs about 5 years ago, where the members of the committee all have to do a couple lines at a time. So we're getting there. And the error we haven't found an answer for yet is the optional XOR, and that requires optional XOR and required XOR appear in the same aggregate. Again, the JSON schemas are available, but you'll have to contact Charlie at charlie@CIECA.com to get the copies of those, as they're not in a release status yet. CIECA has revitalized its development of property messages. We envision this will parallel the vehicle damage process in terms of a suite of messages going forward. To continue tracking photo estimates through the repair order message, an evaluation will occur to ensure it does, and if not, to add the needed information to enable it to be tracked. The QA process to have instance documents for all CIECA messages will continue, and JSON's finalization of the conversion will continue. Thank you for sharing your time with me, learning about the 2018 R2 release, and find out what the committees and QA team are doing. I will invite any of you to participate with me at the architecture or the QA meetings. And the big excitement for architecture starting this summer was the meetings only require a half hour of your time every week. And the QA meetings are a different story, where those are in-person meetings that take a couple of days. But you're always invited to participate in any of the committees. As some committees have completed their work, CIECA hosts semi-annual webinars for each committee to keep current in meeting our members' needs and to update them on changes to our standards. Again, if you want to become involved, please contact Charlie Quirt at charlie@CIECA.com. I hope you found this informative and appreciate your work on our CIECA standard.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. That was a great presentation. This concludes our 2018 CIECAcast series. Please check out our lineup for 2019 on the CIECA website just by following from any of the pages, events, and the third one down right now is the 2019 CIECAcast schedule. You'll get an idea there. Also on the tab, you will find the annual CIECA conference, Connects 2018. It will be held September 16th through the 18th in Charlottesville, Virginia. Please go to CIECAconnects.com. In addition to this the informative sessions at Connects 2019, there will be a tour of the IIHS, the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety facility. This is one conference you don't want to miss. Also, don't forget to follow CIECA on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thank you for keeping abreast of the CIECA developments. Our standards are built by volunteers from all industry segments. For those of you that have contributed to our standards, we thank you. If you have not been involved and would like to participate, please contact Charlie. As always, the video of this presentation will be available on the CIECA website within 48 hours. Again, thank you, Dan, and thank you, our audience, for participating. Have a great day and a great holiday season.